So yesterday, Monday, Diddy celebrated his 55th birthday, but this year was a lot different. It was no Diddy parties. It was none of that. None of that stuff. Well, happily so, I guess, right now. But anyway, so this is his first birthday behind bars. Yeah, but so there's still, I mean, it's crazy too because there's still more happening in court. Like, I mean, everything is still active even though we're not hearing about it as much anymore. And the people may be fatigued like we talked about prior to.
The courtroom buzzed with a tension that felt almost electric, the kind of atmosphere that only builds when the stakes are stratospheric and the players involved are larger than life. Sean Diddy Combs, the artist turned mogul whose name has been synonymous with power, luxury, and undeniable influence, strode into the federal courthouse in downtown Manhattan, every eye glued to him. His once glamorous aura now carried a weight, a certain somberness, as if the years of allegations and whispers had finally materialized into a crushing reality. Dressed in the beige prison jumpsuit that's become his unwelcome uniform, his graying hair and tired eyes painted a stark contrast to the vibrant, untouchable persona he crafted over decades. Yet, even in this subdued state, Diddy's presence was commanding, his every glance and subtle gesture reminding the spectators that this wasn't just another trial. It was a reckoning.
That they will be adding 2 defense attorneys. We only thought initially it was 1, but one thing that stood out to me when Mark Agnifilo was talking about this was he said that these defense attorneys are in the courtroom right now. I didn't see Mark Garagos in that courtroom, but what I did see is 2 defense attorneys that have been there when Brian Steele came on board, and those 2 defense attorneys were Nicole Westmoreland.
The allegations stacked against him are not just shocking, they're seismic. Accusations of orchestrated misconduct, coercion, and even the manipulation of those closest to him have turned the once celebrated king of hip-hop into the centerpiece of one of the most explosive scandals in entertainment history. The federal charges read like the script of a Hollywood thriller, but the drama unfolding in real life is far darker. The term freak-offs has become a chilling buzzword, evoking images of meticulously planned events that prosecutors argue were designed to fulfill Diddy's alleged desires, while trapping participants in a web of fear and control. As the gallery filled with reporters, legal analysts, and curious onlookers, it became clear this was no ordinary day in court. The air inside the room was heavy with unspoken questions. How did it come to this? How could someone who built an empire on charisma and charm become embroiled in such damning accusations? And, perhaps most intriguingly, what would Diddy's defense team, stacked with some of the fiercest legal minds in the country, pull out of their arsenal to counter the government's case?
Or not really the judge. The government didn't go into too many details about the extent of the plea offer, but one thing that they had said was pretty much that under the plea offer, he would be facing less time than he's facing if he would have gone to trial. So when the allocution portion came, Diddy stood up. The judge kind of read him everything that he had needed to read to him, just about whether or not he was of sound mind, whether or not...
The absence of Diddy's family was glaring. In the earlier pre-trial hearings, his inner circle had been a constant, filling the benches with a show of solidarity. His mother Janice and his children had been there, their presence a quiet but powerful statement of support. But now, as the trial loomed just days away, the seats reserved for his loved ones sat empty. Was this a calculated decision to avoid the media frenzy? Or was it a sign of cracks forming in the foundation of his once unshakable support system? If Diddy felt the weight of their absence, he didn't show it, at least not outwardly. Instead, he scanned the room with a steely gaze, his expression unreadable but undeniably intense. What added another layer of intrigue to the day's proceedings was the revelation that Diddy had formally rejected a plea deal, a decision that sent shockwaves through the legal and entertainment worlds alike. By turning down the government's offer, he wasn't just betting on his legal team's ability to dismantle the prosecution's case, he was gambling with his future. It's a high-risk move, especially when the potential consequences include spending the rest of his life behind bars. But Diddy's confidence, or perhaps defiance, was palpable. When asked directly by the judge if he understood the stakes, his response was unwavering, "Yes, I did." It was a moment that underscored the razor-sharp tension of the trial, a reminder that this was no plea for leniency. This was war.
As far as the plea offer that came up in the last hearing where the government said we did offer him a deal, or an offer, I should say, and that he rejected it. And now it's official, and he said it to the court as well, too. You know, he stood up, he said that he consulted with this about his attorneys, and it seems like they're planning, or not even seems like they are, they're rolling the dice by going to...
Behind the scenes, whispers of strategy and speculation swirled. The defense team, led by the formidable Mark Agnifilo, had already made headlines for its bold approach. Agnifilo, known for defending high-profile clients like Martin Shkreli and Keith Raniere, has a reputation for turning seemingly insurmountable cases into courtroom victories. But even with his expertise, the odds seemed daunting. The government's case was meticulously crafted, its foundation built on years of investigations, witness testimonies, and what prosecutors claimed was irrefutable evidence. Among their star witnesses, alleged victims who were prepared to testify under their real names, a move that signaled their determination to confront Diddy directly. The sheer gravity of their accusations was enough to leave even seasoned legal analysts stunned. And yet, the defense appeared unfazed. Agnafilo's strategy was beginning to take shape, and it was clear he intended to frame Diddy not as a predator, but as a misunderstood man caught in a whirlwind of consensual, albeit unconventional, relationships. The term swinger lifestyle had already been floated in pre-trial discussions, hinting at a narrative that sought to normalize the alleged behavior as part of a broader cultural phenomenon. It was a controversial angle, to say the least, but one that had the potential to resonate with jurors if presented effectively.
Jesse, we've been talking about this, just how confident the defense appears that, they could get off on these charges. They could be acquitted, or possibly, who knows what could happen, just because, again, you are rolling the dice. This really does feel like just kind of like, just kind of like a gambling a little bit with Diddy's life in a sense, just because, if you're offered maybe X amount of time versus this huge amount of time, which could be.
But the courtroom drama didn't end there. The day's discussions also touched on logistical hurdles, including how to handle the sensitive nature of the trial's evidence and testimony. The judge ruled that Diddy would be allowed to wear non-prison attire during the trial, a decision that, while seemingly minor, carried significant symbolic weight. The image of Diddy in designer button-down shirts and tailored pants, as opposed to the khaki jumpsuit of a detainee, could subtly influence how jurors perceived him. It was a calculated move, one that underscored the defense's focus on controlling every detail of the narrative. As the hearing continued, the prosecution raised concerns about potential violations of the gag order, pointing to recent media coverage and a high-profile documentary that had reignited public interest in the case. Defense attorneys fired back, accusing the government of trying to sway public opinion before the trial even began. The tension between the two sides was palpable, their exchanges sharp and unrelenting. It was clear that both teams were gearing up for a battle that would be as much about public perception as it was about the law.
Bars, you would think possibly, it's the federal government building a case against you. Maybe you would go for the lesser offer, but again, that would be having to admit that he had did something wrong. And the defense has always maintained that he is innocent, he has done nothing wrong, that this is just, these are just ex-girlfriends that are mad at, like just all these types of things that the defense is.
Meanwhile, rumors of a potential expansion to Diddy's legal team added another layer of intrigue. Speculation had been swirling for weeks about high-profile attorneys who might join the defense, including names that would undoubtedly command attention in the courtroom. While no official announcements were made, the mere possibility of such additions signaled the seriousness with which Diddy and his team were approaching the trial. This wasn't just about clearing his name, it was about mounting a defense so formidable that it could dismantle the government's case piece by piece. And then there was the question of the jury. Selecting an impartial panel for a case of this magnitude was always going to be a Herculean task. After all, who hasn't heard of Diddy? The man's name is etched into the fabric of pop culture, his influence extending far beyond music and into fashion, business, and philanthropy. Finding jurors who could separate the man from the myth, who could weigh the evidence without being swayed by his celebrity, was a challenge that loomed large over the proceedings. The judge's plan to question 50 prospective jurors a day underscored the urgency of the process, but whether it would yield the right results remained to be seen.
And the judge said that, he seemed to be taking this kind of matter seriously. Now, I will just kind of preface it and say it. I haven't seen the documentary, but it's not out of the realm, or it's not out of the norm that she even went on this documentary as well, too, because she had previously gone on another documentary and kind of talked about her client's accusations against Diddy as well, too. So I was surprised that they brought up this particular documentary. Again, I don't know the extent of what she had said, but the defense seemed very annoyed in a way. And
as the day's session drew to a close, the tension in the courtroom was almost unbearable. The stakes couldn't be higher, and every decision, every ruling, every piece of evidence felt like another step toward an outcome that would either vindicate or condemn one of the most influential figures in modern entertainment. The trial hadn't even officially begun, but the battle lines were already drawn, and the stage was set for what promised to be a legal showdown of epic proportion. And just when you thought the stakes couldn't get any higher, the courtroom drama surrounding Sean Diddy Combs veered into even more jaw-dropping territory. Behind closed doors, whispers of internal tensions within his defense team began to surface, raising questions about whether the cracks were starting to show in what was supposed to be an impenetrable legal fortress. Beyond the carefully orchestrated courtroom appearances and confident press statements, insiders hinted at a less polished reality. A team scrambling to make sense of the mounting evidence and the increasingly damning testimonies that threatened to unravel Diddy's empire thread by thread.
And so the judge, again, seemed to be taking that matter pretty seriously and just pretty much said that, everyone, the attorneys, the witnesses' attorneys, the accusers' attorneys, they all have to adhere to these professional rules. They all have to adhere to this professional conduct. And if this continues and if more things are said that get onto the judge's radar.
Let's start with the government's strategy, which has proven to be as aggressive as it is meticulous. Newly filed court documents revealed an arsenal of evidence that prosecutors intend to unleash during the trial. Evidence that reportedly includes hours of video footage, transcripts of phone conversations, and financial records that paint a picture far too detailed for comfort. One particularly chilling piece of evidence is said to involve communications between Diddy's inner circle, where staff members allegedly discussed the logistics of certain events that the prosecution now claims were central to their case. These messages, described as casual yet shocking in their implications, could be the linchpin in proving that this wasn't just one man's misconduct. It was a carefully coordinated effort involving multiple people who all played their roles in keeping things quiet.
Well, first of all, I can only imagine how sloppy Sean Combs was with evidence when he got busted with those 2 machine guns or 3 machine guns with the altered serial numbers. So I really don't trust Sean Combs or the people around him's ability to properly cover up anything. So I envision that you're going to see at trial payments from his Amex for flights for people, straight payments directly from his company to people.
But what makes these communications even more damning is their apparent timeline, which stretches back years before the allegations first surfaced publicly. Prosecutors claim they have messages that not only reveal detailed planning, but also show how Diddy's team allegedly worked to cover their tracks once whispers of an investigation began to circulate. One exchange, reportedly dated months before the first raid, allegedly features a high-ranking associate raising concerns about unwanted attention and suggesting ways to manage the fallout. If these messages are authenticated in court, they could serve as a devastating blow to the defense's claims that there was no coordinated wrongdoing. Even more unnerving is the revelation that some of these messages were deleted after the investigation began, an act the prosecution is framing as potential obstruction. Digital forensics teams, however, were reportedly able to recover fragments of these communications, painting a partial but incriminating portrait of what might have been discussed. The defense has already signaled its intent to challenge the validity of these recovered messages, but the prosecution is confident they can prove tampering occurred. If the jury interprets this as an attempt to hide the truth, it could be a catastrophic shift in the trial's dynamic.
And then the time frame is important because this happened in hotels, in places that have surveillance, that there's records that could be consistent with his testimony about when he alleges that these parties took place. He probably has his own information about who attended the events. When you're somebody like Sean Combs and you're such a celebrity and you're engaged in this type of behavior, people around you are memorializing it.
And then there's the matter of the witnesses. The prosecution has been tight-lipped about their full roster, but leaks from those close to the case suggest that the list is both extensive and explosive. Among the names being floated are former employees, insiders from Diddy's business ventures, and even a few high-profile figures who are expected to testify about their first-hand experiences. What's more, some witnesses are reportedly prepared to provide insight into the financial mechanisms that kept everything running smoothly, payments, perks, and other incentives that may have been used to ensure silence and loyalty. If these witnesses deliver as promised, they could not only bolster the government's case, but also drag others into the spotlight, creating a domino effect of revelations that could extend far beyond Diddy himself. And this brings us to the defense's supposed confidence. A confidence that increasingly feels more like a calculated front than a genuine belief in their client's innocence. Rumors of behind-the-scenes friction have been swirling, with sources claiming that not all members of the legal team are aligned on how to approach the case. Some are said to favor a more aggressive strategy, one that involves discrediting the witnesses and challenging the authenticity of the evidence at every turn. Others are reportedly urging caution, worried that such tactics could backfire and alienate the jury. The addition of new lawyers to the team has only added to the speculation, with some questioning whether the late-stage reinforcements signal strength or desperation.
This is somebody that actually thought that he was above the law. So I can only, think that, he was sloppy in the way that he did these crimes, that there's probably a trail of evidence, not only involving him, but everybody in his circle that he would, delegate these responsibilities to.
But the courtroom isn't the only battleground. Outside those towering walls of justice, a media war is raging, and Diddy's team is fighting to control the narrative. Carefully crafted statements have been released, emphasizing his philanthropic efforts, his contributions to the music industry, and his role as a family man. Yet these attempts to humanize him stand in stark contrast to the increasingly lurid details emerging from court filings and testimony. It's a public relations tightrope, and one misstep could send the entire operation tumbling into the abyss. And let's not forget the role of social media, where public opinion shifts with the speed of a trending hashtag. For every comment defending Diddy as a victim of a witch hunt, there are dozens condemning him, fueled by the damning headlines and the snippets of evidence that have made their way into the public domain.
Wait a minute. Say that again. Say that again. Back up. You're saying that there's tapes and they're being shopped?
Yes, there have been people already shopping.
We've heard about the tapes, but
yes.
The shopping thing is
yes,
new.
there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of.
Meanwhile, the judge overseeing the trial has shown little tolerance for theatrics or delays, making it clear that this case will proceed on schedule. His rulings have been swift and decisive, leaving little room for maneuvering. He's already shut down attempts to delay the trial on procedural grounds and has firmly denied requests to exclude key evidence, including some that Diddy's team argued was obtained improperly. Each ruling has tightened the noose, and with jury selection underway, the clock is ticking. The defense knows that their window to shape the narrative is closing fast. And then there's the jury itself, perhaps the most unpredictable element in this high-stakes drama. The defense has reportedly been scrutinizing every potential juror's background, searching for any hint of bias or preconceived notions. But how do you find impartiality in a case that's been splashed across every major news outlet for months? How do you convince 12 strangers to set aside the court of public opinion and focus solely on the evidence presented in that sterile, fluorescent-lit room? It's a monumental task, and one that could very well decide the outcome of the trial before the first witness even takes the stand.
It sounds like there was probably a lot of hidden cameras as well. Is that what is being talked about?
Yes, this was actually in his Atlanta home, at a home he had in Atlanta at one point. And it does seem that the person isn't like looking into the video, so to me, doesn't seem like that person knows they're being videotaped. It doesn't seem like they're active participant in the videotaping.
But let's not overlook the human element in all of this. The emotional toll, the sheer exhaustion that comes with fighting a battle of this magnitude. Diddy's public appearances, while rare, have shown a man visibly aged by the ordeal. The charisma that once lit up stages and boardrooms now seems dimmed, replaced by a somberness that's impossible to ignore. Even his staunchest supporters have noted the change, describing a figure who appears to be carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And yet there are moments when that old fire flickers to life, when he flashes a defiant smile or delivers a sharp retort in court. It's a reminder that despite everything, this is a man who has built his entire life on defying the odds. Whether that resilience will be enough to see him through this storm remains to be seen. And so, the stage is set for a trial that promises to be as riveting as it is consequential. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for Diddy, but for everyone involved. Careers, reputations, and even lives hang in the balance, and the outcome will undoubtedly reverberate far beyond the walls of the courtroom. But as the evidence piles up and the testimonies loom, one question lingers, casting a shadow over everything. How much of the truth are we really prepared to face? All right, that's it for now. Let us know your take in the comments. Do you think Diddy's defense has a chance, or is this case already a lost cause? And what do you think about the prosecution's approach so far? Drop your thoughts below, and we'll catch you in the next one.